Hi, my name is Eman Hassan, and I'm thrilled to be here today to share my poems with you. I want to give a special thanks to the Portland Art Museum and to the Portland Literary Festival for having me here today to share my work. I will be reading a selection of poems from my first collection, RAGHEAD. And the poems I've selected to share with you speak to power dynamics and power struggles and to a lot of the environmental issues that we face today together and collectively in the States and in the world. And I have this wonderful painting in the backdrop by Joseph Stella called Factories at Night. And I think you will see the resonance between his painting and my poems. So let us begin. My first poem is called Rome is Burning. I can't blame Nero for playing the fiddle while watching his city fireball. Sure, there was blood on his hands, turned powerless now, except for churning out tunes like a devil dancing on a hot-oiled griddle. It's not like everyone can hear the frantic chirps of crickets. We crank up our music at safe distances from one another, take refuge behind a Blu-ray mesmer. I mean, isn't this the stigmata of what we do? All hail to purchase power, to lifelines of credit. All hail to the power of fire. So play, Nero, play that fiddle. Let's break out some boom chicka pop and watch the world go poof. The second poem is called What We Made, and it takes place in Kuwait, 2000, where I'm a bicultural person. My dad was originally from Kuwait and my mother's from Massachusetts. So as a fresh undergrad graduate, I went back for a while, and this was my first job there. So I worked at a petrochemical plant very briefly. So what we made. Tiny pellets in glass jars on the CFO's desk, and the desk of the warehouse manager who once proudly asked my green-eared newbiness if I knew how important our job was, if I knew what we made supplied raw materials for grocery bags, Tupperware, milk containers, lighters, you name it. Plastic is in everything, he'd say. And he was right. There I learned various petrochemical densities, polypropylene, polyethylene, and other byproducts emitted like ammonia, and the imminent dangers sometimes released ammonia clouds posed. We were committed to stay indoors until those vapors passed. But who can say for sure where they passed on to? An older British man there took great pleasure in pinching the backs of my hands, teaching me about elastin, how the body's fibroblasts produce less and less as we age, how he enjoyed my 20-something's horror at the prospect of losing collagen. I'm not proud of who I was then, nor proud of my former manager who laughed when I could no longer live with myself and quit. She thought me a loser, and she was right, except aren't we all losers in these long-term climatic stakes? Sometimes I think of those former coworkers, wonder if, when settling before a lunch of grilled fish, they ever thought, in addition to the cost of price per barrel, what the long-term costs of what we made were. If they had seen pictures of seagulls' desiccated gullets splayed open, cavities filled with utensil stuff, if they connected the dots between plastic pellets and the bellies of the fish warming their own stomachs. Fruits de mer of our own making. I was just telling someone earlier that I'm really happy to be reading with a mask because I think it embodies the spirit of what we're going through in the world, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, when I heard that I was going to be reading my poems with a mask on, I'm like, this is perfect because I'm sure you guys can hear my labored breath. And I've been thinking a lot of how, even the very air around us has become not something that we can luxuriate out into, but it's kind of become like a trap. So on that note, I'll read you another happy poem called Rome is Still Burning. Happy being sarcastic, of course. Rome is still burning. 1. Fiddlesticks to testimony. We have only apocryphal narratives, hearsay, documented as facts, accounting for Nero's whereabouts on that infamous night. Some wrote he was out of town, Others say he played the fiddle while watching the city burn, or those historians, valuing their heads, depict him pulling bodies from rubble instead of ordering the stricken match. Here's what we know for sure. Truth remains artifact buried under an oasis of the past. These are the known facts. Rome blazed. Death tolls most likely inaccurate. We know lives were lost, the particulars of which, in the machinations of myth-making, are insignificant granules of sand. There's consensus that Nero murdered his mother, though she leveraged his rise to power. We are told she minted gold coins with Nero's image after Claudius adopted him. Later, coins with both their faces on either side. 2. Fact. Power rises like wildfire. Fact. Roman stone smoldered for days. 3. I prefer to think Nero played the fiddle in the way fiddlers at wakes make music, was also a heroic artist, not just a monstrous product of power. The trajectory of power is known to catapult people into. In this retelling, there's an itch deep in the nostril of Nero's dream, picking him out of a webbed slumber where resinous scents of elderberry and dandelion wine are overpowered by char, singed hair, smell of burnt flesh and fabric, cloying the air of his chambers, yanking him awake to mend his human disconnect, lifting lunatic illusions of superiority power brings that clung like smoke. Those odors jolt him back into the smallness of when he was a boy, still possessed of that fierce sweetness, joy in being, that inspires hands and hearts of artists. He takes to the roof, where the city night is overcome with clamors of many-tongued flames, roaring from windows, consuming buildings, people, their labor, hot licks growing closer. 5. In this story, Nero is both hero and villain. In my story, Nero is alone. He is having a moment of clarity. He is experiencing momentary madness, sees his predicament as at once both beautiful and absurd, feeling powerless as one laid bare before the possibility of death might feel when witnessing travesty greater than one's singular experience, lonely without another beside him to share in the spectatorship, to perpetuate the facade of emperor. So he acts like any man, stand out of their fixed narrative might act. He picks up his fiddle, whittles a homage to the flames. We retell this story over and over, its winding repetition a spiraled staircase, echoing with footsteps. All right, this next poem is called Coins and People, which I think is a good follow-up to the previous poem. I wrote this in an airport, by the way, after being very jaded by a lot of capitalist material things I'd experienced that summer, but that's another story. Here's a story I want to share called Coins and People. Spinning coins fall either way, and so do people. Some people will dance for coins thrown at them. Then there are people who like to throw coins down and make others dance. Some people will dance hot and heavy for coins until the dance grows venomous, grows brutal, until heads crack, tails break. Some knowingly watch, refuse to join in. Others move to a different rhythm, preferring passionate tangles of tangos, arms folding into the other's tempo, waltz together as magnets. Then there are those who don't get it and linger on corners, weep for coins from strangers, and will not dance. Those who exit the dance with weights of coins on their eyes. Some people's eyes never see coins, while others have so many coins they can't see people. Some only know people for their coins, and though coins flip most people's heads and change choreographs into staggers, we somehow forget how this story ends. It's always the same story between coins and people. This next poem is called Suspended, and it takes place in a helicopter in the air above the Kuwait Southern oil fields in 1991. I fresh out of high school, volunteered as an interpreter during the Gulf War, and the captain of where I worked at an evac hospital in Saudi Arabia took us on this wonderful, terrible ride. So suspended. The pilot misunderstood our silence, swooped at the helicopter low for a closer look. The desert burning like candlesticks, weeks and weeks of night on end. We washed cars with gasoline to remove soot, covered naked women in deserted police stations after Saddam's soldiers withdrew. Is there another lunatic who says war makes for a better person? They left pelicans oil-slicked, killed coral, took truckloads of our men in their wake. I recall that pilot as though trembling before a forgotten lover's ghost. Remember only hovering above billowing clouds of slanted columns of smoke, a birthday's endless night. This one is called to all people. To the scientists, can we ever heal this plasticized water? To my mother, I already mourn your not yet death. To Mother Earth, I say, my light was once as big as you are big, not a shriveled plum skulking behind its breastplate, pumping out the spotty aura, deplete as the ozone. To E.T., yes, please, phone home. Take me along, s'il vous plaît. The empire is striking hard. My words fallen angels without halos. My lightsaber now just a glow stick, stuck in the back corner of a drawer left over from the 90s. To my Generation X, did you forget what the X even stood for? We were the ones who invented the rave and raved, gave Big Corpse the finger, danced ecstatically under full moons. We raged until the sun climbed over a lip of earth. Those were bright days. We were grateful for the radiant blessings of music behind our force field of youth. To all people, don't you remember the pre-spinning of words like natural and free range, when our biggest concern was lard on our Oreos in a pre-Splenda, pre-saturated non-GMO era? Better I hurry back into my mother. Better my mother hurry back into her earth womb than stand witness to all this and all this. Actually, in hindsight, I'd like to also dedicate this reading to everybody in Oregon and California who lost their homes this summer, summer of 2020. All right, this next poem also takes place in Kuwait in 2004, and it's called To the Beach with My Nephew. Excuse me. To the beach with my nephew. It's in the way we hold a sandwich in each hand. We relish the drive. My sister recalling how light blue were the skies of our youth, turning backs on the soot-heavy black now spewing from the oil refinery we passed by. Uncapped flares, smoking like dirty dinars, lighting the desert on fire for more. The refinery resembles New York City at night to those who know and dream of being somewhere else, maybe over there. Then we savor the cheap falafel wraps over here. Once we reach the shore, I tell my nephew how clean the deep used to be. Now barnacles form on styrofoam. Wind hurls the white-tipped whorls forward like a heartbeat, like a refinery that never sleeps. I want to say enough, OC, but the waves keep coming. Two hermit crabs are locked in battle. It's in the way their claws grip together. My nephew meant well, jumped to interfere, save the smaller from becoming the larger one's meal. But the waves keep coming, and we are in Manhattan, looking out a window over the Hudson. And I think I will end this note, my readings, on this poem. Not too long ago, the Notre Dame Cathedral was nearly burnt to the ground, so I thought it relevant to, include it in this collection as well. It has a funny title called I've Come Back for My Clothes. So, at Notre Dame, I've come back for my clothes. Those tattered rags in a glass case belonging to a nameless saint are mine. Those cherubs in ceiling corners looking down at us are real. If I stood behind the pulpit and prayed out loud while looking up into the palm of a stained glass dome, who's to say I haven't stood here before, even before these marble floors were grouted and laid? We learn about dying from the dead in the form of a chain, of one long chain, outside the circle of linear minds. We all once knew the secret handshake, the firm grip of hands, outside of time. So tell me, dear Cynthia, who's to say these clothes aren't mine? Thank you.